Okay, we'll start with, what is your full name?
Full name?
Yes.
Conrad Franklin.
Okay. And who were your parents?
Joseph Franklin and Duetta Franklin.
And what was your mother's maiden name?
Nichols.
Okay. Who were your grandparents?
This is a hard one. I know, but my grandmother on one side died in 1884.
Wow.
That was my grandmother.
Your father's mother.
Yeah, there was James Franklin and what's her name? On the other side, it was George Nichols and Mary Ann Nichols.
Okay.
That other name will come to me in a minute.
Okay.
I slow on some of those things.
Okay.
What name did you want?
Grammy Franklin, down at the church,
I don't know.
When were you born?
1935,
And where were you born?
Digby Hospital.
Okay. How large was your family when you were growing up?
I'm number 10.
Number 10.
I was the last one.
And what did you think about that?
We got along well with one another. Oh, yeah, had your little scraps and stuff like that, but I was quite a bit younger than some of them, so I always figured I had protection from all the rest of the brothers and sisters. Of course, by the time I was born, some of my older ones were married and out on their own. My older sister is still alive, and she's 86.
Wow.
Yeah. She's in Stony Creek, Ontario.
Wow.
We're a pretty happy family.
Good. What did your father do for a living?
Everything was woods work then, working in the woods, logging, stuff like that, going back, working in the mills, things. Had a little small farm here for some of our food and stuff.
What would your mother's work day be like?
You really want to know? Well, when I was born, that's the year they put electricity in the house. So everything was done by hand for the whole 10 children. You lugged your water, everything was done by hand. All the cooking, everything was done. You didn't buy anything. So she had a busy day, plus bringing up 10 children. It'd be very hard to really say. It'd be hard work. They were very strong people. They had to be in those days. They were
Right.
very, very strong. Raise 10 children and do everything by hand.
Even to carrying the water,
Carrying the water.
baking bread, washing clothes by hand.
Wow.
It was all done by hand.
So how would you say when you got electricity, how did that change things for you?
I guess probably the first thing, she got an electric washer, instead of doing it all by hand. And a few lights in the house. You didn't use the lamps and the candles, stuff like that. You still allowed to do the work outside the barns and stuff. You always use lanterns and whatever. It was an inconvenience. Today it would be an inconvenience, but that's what you grew up with. It was just natural. It's just natural to do that.
Tell me about a typical school day for you.
I started school down here in you just come up by the Hillgrove Baptist Church,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a Christian center right beside it. That's where we started school. I guess I started probably 1940. And we had to walk there. It was quite a chore. I used to love getting in the ditch and fall asleep. Half the time I didn't get to school. I enjoyed that. But in 1943, they took us to town school. I think we were probably one of the first in Canada that was bused to a town school in 1943.
Wow.
I've heard rumors to that effect. I mean, I can't swear by it, but they did take us to town school in 1943. During the war, you couldn't get teachers. Everybody was in the services. It was quite a shock to us to go from the country into a town school. The academy in Digby. Of course, it's closed now, but it was the academy right by the courthouse and the jail. And that's where we started school in Digby. Or really,
Is it still
Well,
standing there today? That
it's still there, but they haven't used it in quite a few years. They built a piece on it in 1943, and we were the first school from any area around to go to town school. And then each year after that, they started bringing other little communities in. That was 1943.
So how do you think you adjusted to having to go into the town?
It was very, very hard to start off with. We're used to the country. And you got in town, they had a lot more luxuries than we did and things like that in the school, and it took some adjusting to get used to it. But we managed. And Well, once you've been there a year or so, then everything was fine.
Right.
But it took a while to adjust, coming from the country right in. Used to be a few scraps here and there along the way. You know, it was different.
What would the bus rides be like going there?
Well, actually, there was no such thing as school bus. They took us on the Acadia lines,
Oh,
which
wow.
I think it's called Nova now. Irvin bought it out, so I don't know what it's really called. But it was the Acadia lines. They used to call them the Clippers. The bus was the same in front, so it wasn't back.
Okay.
And they were the same buses that went from Yarmouth to Halifax or whatever. That's what we traveled on to start out with.
Oh,
We still had to walk to the old school. They didn't pick us up at our homes. We still had to walk down a mile. Sometimes we had to walk to Rice's Corner, a mile and a half, to pick up the buses. They didn't come up here until 1947 before they come up here. So we still had to walk. We collect in the old school where it used to be, or somebody's home down there. Uncle Tom's, we used to go there sometimes for a year or two until the buses started coming up this way.
Wow.
But they were fantastic buses. They were luxury buses at that time. And of course we knew the drivers, the different ones that were from around here. They were Acadia Line drivers.
Wow.
But it was nice.
Neat. Do you remember who your best friend would have been at school back then?
Everybody's really a friend in them days, I guess.
Yeah.
I used to chum around a lot with Frankie Wilson and Carl Smith.
Okay.
They were good. Your best friends sometimes didn't go to the same school. See, the Catholic school was right beside it, but yet they weren't allowed to go on the buses. They would go to a different school, but they had to walk to Digby. Things were different then.
Now, why was it that they couldn't go on the buses?
You were under a separate school, so... now, my best buddy up here was Dickie Griffin. We were chums all our lives. But they went to the Catholic school, and they weren't allowed to go on our buses. That's the way things were in them days. I don't really understand why. And I remember going to school, and I feel so sorry. We'd pass by kids, they had to walk to town.
Aww.
Because it was a public school, and yet they were going to Catholic school, which would be St. Pat's. I don't know what it is now. I think it's apartment buildings. But there was a Catholic convent there, and they went to the school there. Now, I don't know what year they started picking them up, but it'll be quite a while after that, because they had to walk. And my buddy walking to school, he'd always be late because it was pretty close to 5 miles, and we had a ride. I never ever thought that was quite fair.
Oh. That's interesting. What types of things would you do with your friends?
Oh, we were always down the woods. Down the woods or the fields. And we enjoyed that. Country kids, there was really not that much for us in town. We'd get to go to town on a Saturday night to go to movies.
Mm-hmm.
When we got older, you'd be well up 14, 15 years old before you got to go to town to go to a movie, if you could scrape up 15, 20 cents to go to the movie. But it was nice. That was something we looked forward to. There's no
Right.
such thing as televisions or any of those things. We'd have an old battery radio. That's about all you had. You made your own entertainment and stuff like
What would that battery radio have looked like?
that. The old one we had almost looked like a car battery, but it was an old radio. It was just an old cheap thing that half the time didn't work, but we get a few things. Don Messerini's Islanders. And
Okay. What is your best memory of school?
I think one of the nicest things I ever had, we had to, if you were an honor student, you didn't have to write your exams.
Oh, nice.
And one year, I had to write my exams. I was never an honor student. I had to write my exams, but I got the highest mark. I think that was quite a highlight. I guess I was in grade 9, 8 or 9.
Now, what subject was that in?
Well, it would be all my subjects put together, your average, and I had the highest mark in the class
Wow.
on our final exams. But anybody that had a 75 or 80 average didn't have to write exams. We had 4 sets of exams each year.
Excellent.
So one year, even though I had to write my exams, I had the highest marks.
Good.
I think I got $1 for a prize.
Oh, good for
That was,
you.
that was good out in the 40s.
I guess.
$1 was a lot.
What sorts of things would you grow and raise yourself?
Down here?
Yeah.
Well, first thing, you had to have a big potato patch, turnip patch, all those things so you could fill the basement. At that time, years ago, we had an orchard down below, but those trees is long gone. They were gone. So we put as much of that in as for the winter as we could. In fact, we still do. She's already done up 100 bottles of stuff this year for our winter. Well, we had to do that.
Yeah.
because there's a big family and you didn't have the extra things to eat. You relied 100% on those potatoes. And you'd raise a pork. Now, it's not like pork you would buy in the store today. You'd buy a pig in the spring. And you'd feed that as much, anything you could get. Anything that wouldn't be bought. You'd have a little bit of bought food, but not that much. And get that pig up 400 and 500 pounds. Or the fat would be that thick on it. That's what you lived on in the winter. You relied on it 100%.
Wow.
You'd salt the meat. And it was salty. You'd have to soak it out before you could use it. But you had to have something like that to rely on through the winter. Because you didn't have things as they are today. If people saw what it was back then, they wouldn't understand. I mean, we survived. I'm not saying we didn't survive and stuff like that, but you could be guaranteed you had potatoes 6 days out of the week. Oh yeah. On Saturday, you're fortunate you had baked beans.
Wow.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. How much of what you needed would you make yourself?
Everything.
Would you?
Everything. I mean, the family-wise.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we'd buy flour. It used to be in 100-pound bags or a barrel. And I think that was 250 pounds in a barrel. It wouldn't take us long to use that. Big family. 100 pounds of flour is not very much when you've got a big family.
Especially when you
But-
bake bread every day.
Oh yeah, Mom made bread every day of the week.
Wow.
That's in big loaves. Every day she'd make it, except Sunday. And even the bags that had come in, the flour bags, that was one of your main sources of material. We used all those flour bags. You've probably heard tell of it. They'd use that old lye soap, kill your hands, and get all the markings off that they could. That's what our clothes were made out of. Our underwears, all our stuff was made out of flour bags. Oh yeah.
Who would make those for
Mom, we're self-sufficient. You had to be.
you? Wow.
You had to be. Oh yeah.
That's hard to believe.
How many kids?
Yeah.
I'm number 10.
You're number 10.
Yeah, they were the same in her family, 11.
Wow.
They're big
Yeah, I
families.
can still see my mother sitting at the sewing machine.
Oh yeah, everything was sewed, knit,
Your underwear. And
She
your
knit all
socks
day
and
and all night.
dresses.
making mittens and socks and or winter hats and everything.
Was that really common back then to have such a big family? Did like?
Oh yes, very much so. Very much so.
So, basically, everyone was one of 10 or one of 12 or something like that.
Yeah, well, you had a place in your family when you were big enough to walk, you were big enough to work. I mean, by the time you were 5, 6, 7 years old, you were cutting the kindlings, logging the wood, working in the barn, doing the barn chores, all that stuff, you know. So, I just heard a little piece on the radio a couple of days ago, how it was going back then, and it's so much harder now. You don't have the close-knit relationship that you did then.
Mm-hmm.
You had to rely on that. That was nice. If one of us little guys having trouble getting to school, you had a bigger sister or brother to help you. You know, it was different. It was certainly different. Of course.
Do you think it's better? It's better. It was better.
When
back
they
then?
say the good old days is right now. You have food on the table, you have a good warm house, you have all the convenience and luxuries and everything. But the good old days that I remember, as far as life, is now. But in those days, the good old days was everything you did, you relied on other people. The community was close-knit, everybody was close-knit. I mean, your brothers was just, well, I was the little one. If I got in trouble, I had a big brother there to help me, or the sister to do this for me. And, you know, you worked on a social system right that way. And it was nice. You don't have that today. You don't have any of that today. Not like it was then. You relied on one another. It was just natural.
What sorts of things would you barter for?
Barter.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing we'd have all winter, we'd get 200 or 300 pounds of dry fish. We would trade squash, pumpkin,
Oh, wow.
potatoes, all that kind of stuff. Oh yeah. Yellow-eyed beans, all that stuff we trade back and forth.
Wow.
Yeah, for different things for the house.
Who would you trade with?
There would be fishermen come around with big trucks of dry fish, and they would trade for vegetables. They were fishing, we'd have vegetables. Firewood, different things like that. And that's what we bartered back and forth there.
Interesting. How would you take care of your teeth back then?
I always remember one thing, I don't think it worked, but sometimes everything was cooked in a wood stove. And sometimes a loaf of bread would get burnt a little bit on top. Mom would say, you eat that black, because that's good for your teeth, that'll clean your teeth. I always remembered. I don't know whether it worked or not, but it'll be burnt a little bit on top. That's good for your teeth. And you know, today, if there's bread that's burned, if she happens to, I love it. It's what you grew up with. Growing up as a small kid, it was very, very hard to get toothpaste because it was during the war. And you couldn't get a new tube of toothpaste unless you turned that old tube in. Because you used to have the Raleigh man and the Watkins man. That was what they were? Yeah. Come around in cars selling stuff. And you'd have grocetinas in those days. The grocery store drove up by. And I remember Mum saving those tubes if we had any too. And if you didn't have that, you'd use salt or you'd use soda.
Would you have toothbrushes?
Yeah, we always had toothpaste.
I don't remember that one. I think I just used your fingers and whatever, as I remember. After the war, we started getting things, yeah. Then we were all getting grown up then.
So how often would you see a dentist?
Never. Unless you had a tooth that would ache so bad that you had to have it out. You didn't go to the dentist.
Do you
Didn't
have
go to the
any
doctors.
memories of going to a dentist?
Yes, I certainly do. I went in, I had a tooth that grew the wrong way. It grew out and started poking a hole in my jaw, so I went in to get it out. The doctor pulled 5. No freezing in those days. You sit there and pull it out, and then I had to walk home from town. I was sick when I got home. That's a long walk.
Freezing was from his knee pushing into your chest.
Yeah, that was all. You just sit there to pull them out, and you didn't cry. Not in them days.
Now, what sorts of tools would he have used to do that?
It's just whatever he has to pull them out with. I'd call it a pair of pliers, but whatever they had to pull them out with. That's all. I'll never forget that episode.
Wow.
Yeah, we went in on a school bus because Dad went in with us. They let Dad on the school bus. We thought I was going to have one tooth out because it would drive me, it was killing me. But he pulled 5.
Isn't that something?
Yeah, but they didn't freeze him. No, not in those days.
Who delivered the babies in your community?
Ooh, that part, I don't know. I'd be the youngest one. The last 3 in our family were born in hospitals in Digby.
Okay.
The other 7 were born in the house. Now, I wouldn't know on that. I suppose my mother's mother will be here, or your neighbors. They all get together and all that stuff. All communities got together. If a big snowstorm, somebody had to go to the hospital, your neighbor would hook up his horse team and take you to town or whatever. Your communities were that way.
What were some home remedies that you would remember being common when you were growing up?
You got a cold, it was always vinegar and onions. Raw onions, vinegar. I like them, they're good. You don't have to eat them. It's okay when you don't have to do it. Oh yeah, you'd have that.
You always talked about that mustard plaster.
Oh, mustard plaster. I'd like to know how to get the recipe for that again. I used to get the croup terrible. I'd go outside 5 minutes and I couldn't breathe. And I'd come in and I'd actually ask for that mustard plaster. Mom knew how to do it. You do it on the wood stove with flannelette. And you put mustard and flour in there somehow. And you'd heat it up on the stove right to the burning point and put that on your chest. And within 5 minutes that would break everything in there. Don't go out for a while afterwards. And don't get too strong because you could peel the hydrate off your chest. But it worked. At all times. It was good. What is called a mustard plaster.
Now, do you still use that remedy today?
I don't know the remedy. I'd give anything to have that remedy. And another thing, in the summer, as soon as frogs started croaking, we were out in our bare feet. That was it. You didn't get shoes every time you need a pair of shoes. You just didn't get them them days. And you'd always have a nail hole in your foot or glass or something like that. Always did, go on your bare feet. You want to tramp hay when there's briars in it in your bare feet. Oh, but anyhow, we always had poultice made out of pork, fat pork. So you would have the fat pork in the basement in the big barrels. And that would always work to keep the infection out.
Wow.
I'll tell you, one thing that really, we'd worry as a kid, you'd get polio from that. Those infections and stuff. And as a kid, there was no cure for polio. Then they come out in the late 40s or something with a vaccine for polio. I think that took a lot of pressure off all of us because we were all afraid of that. You know, you step on a nail and rusty nail, and they were around. You always had a cut foot somewhere. All of us did. We didn't even went to bare feet. So, not to work or anything like that. The older ones didn't do that to work and stuff. But around here in the fire, kids, always in bare feet.
So that was the real scary disease?
To me it was. It was a very scary disease, polio. You've seen so many people died and crippled and stuff like that. It was terrible. They had no cure whatsoever for it. Then they come out. I think they started with a vaccine in England during the war sometime. I'm not sure on details on that. But I'll tell you, I was glad when when we knew that was out and you didn't have to worry anymore
I
for that.
guess.
Yeah. I can remember the first needles we got down here at the old country school. That was probably in 41, something like that. They just lined us up out in the field and take the same needle, shot in the bottom, next one, next one.
Now, would you go with your school to do that, or your classmates, or would you go?
Well, they just took us all out. We were all in the same room, 10 grades. So they just took you out in the yard. There was lots of room and lined you up. You, just in the line, get your needle.
So all of you were in the same classroom at school then?
Yeah, 10 grades in one room.
How many teachers would there have been?
One. This was a small community. There was probably about 40 of us going to school at that time when they took us to Digby.
In one class.
Oh yeah.
So
All different classes you'd have from grade 1 to 10. Kindergarten, primer, we call it primer, primer. That right up to grade 10. Grade 10, 11 and 12, if you wanted to take that, you had to go to Digby.
Now, how would they divide up the teaching to all the different grade levels?
She taught them all. You'd be getting your own lessons part of somebody else's. There was
Wow.
one person there to do it.
did any of the higher grades help out with the younger?
Not on the teaching part, no. Not that I remember. Of course, I only went to primer 1 and 2 here. And in grade 3 we went to Digby, like I said, in 1943.
So how would you have been disciplined at school?
With the strap or a stick.
Oh.
No ifs, no buts. Even right up into town school and high school. Oh yeah.
Now, do you have any memories of ever being strapped?
Yeah, we all got that. One teacher had a long pointer, you know what I mean by the pointers? She could be 6 feet behind you and she could get you right there on that bone in the back. You cried, that hurt.
Oh.
Oh yeah. It was a little different then. You get a backhander.
Do you think that the discipline back then would be a good thing to reinstitute up here now?
In certain parts of it, yes. You would get the odd teacher to go overboard. I understand that. And that was wrong. But strapping didn't hurt me. I knew enough not to do it again. If you told when you got home, you get another licking. Because you shouldn't have been bad in the first place. Yeah. It didn't hurt us. Hurt your feelings maybe for a little while.
Yeah.
But no, that was part of school. No, there's nothing wrong with discipline. I mean, I don't mean go beat people or stuff like that. There's nothing wrong with a little discipline. We must have it. Because if you're not disciplined in things, you just do whatever you want. And we sure didn't. Because if we got caught, you could be sure you got a striping. And you
Now,
get a good one.
How old were you when you left the second school that you attended?
Well, we started at the academy in Digby in 1943. And then in 1946, with all the veterans back, and there was a lot of children in, and they didn't have a new school. So in 1946, they started putting us in the cannon banks. Do you know what I mean by the cannon banks?
No, I don't.
Down by the water, down by the wharf, there's some beautiful apartment buildings there. Seniors, that used to be an Air Force base during the war. And that would take grades 7 and 8. Right by the Catholic school where their parking lot is, there was a great big hall there. It was known as the Scout Hall. They put us in there. The United Church had the church hall at the United Church out back the old station. We went to school there. So that'd be the last part of 46, 47, and the first part of 48. That's when they built the new high school and opened the high school in 1948. And that would take the high school. That took from 7 to 12. That was in 1948.
Now, some of the people that I've talked to said that you only had to go to school up until you were 14 years old. Was that the case when you were in school, or?
It probably was. I know the day I was 16, I was out of school and out to work. So you didn't get to school that you really should have had, whatever grade you happened to be in. I mean, I certainly never went through school, no.
Now, what was the reason you left school?
Well, I was the last one at home then. What? Mom and Dad be well up. They were quite old when I was born. See, I was number 10, so Dad was 50-something when I was born, and Mom was about 45. Well, when I was 16, they were up in their 60s, 70s,
Right.
getting close to 70, so I got out and went to work. I went to work when I was 16. You almost had to in those days. You had to help out. In those days, there wasn't an old age pension at 65 and stuff like that. You got no help from anybody, no government help.
Was it hard to find a job back then?
It wasn't hard to find a job. You could always go into Tupperware's and get a job, but you never got any money. You know what I mean? When I started out to work in 1951, I made 17 cents an hour. That's a long walk to Digby and back home, 10-hour shift, 17 cents an hour. That was not the best of wages.
No.
No, I remember that.
When someone in your community would die, how would they handle the funeral?
Basically the same as today, only sometimes you would have the body at home instead of the funeral homes and things like that. A lot like today, only they didn't have all the facilities they have today and things like that. But when Mom passed away, and I was only, 21, it was quite a few years ago, it was 1956 when Mom passed away. It would be a funeral as like us to now, only not quite so elaborate or a few things like that.
Okay. How often would you leave your town?
I never really went to town, only to go to school. Like on a Saturday night, you go to a movie if you could.
Yeah.
If you had the money or anything like that, you're a little older. But to town, there was nothing for me in town. You just walk in town. I like to go in. I used to go in on a Sunday night. So the Salvation Army would always play, and you go in and watch them and listen to the music and stuff. On a Saturday night and a Sunday night. Saturday night, they'd march right down the whole street. They'd walk off the street for them. The band, the Salvation Army band. And move through. Oh yeah. They'd have a service right at the Cenotaph in Digby. And that slowly went. And then they'd have it Sunday nights until slowly the Salvation Army's not in Digby anymore. But that would be sort of a highlight for you, because that was before we had our TV. 4 TVs were around.
They wouldn't do that every week, would they?
Oh yes, every Saturday. Oh yes.
Wow.
Yeah. You sort of look forward to that. To have them come down. There'd be quite a few of them, 15, 20 of them. There's still people in Digby that was in that band and stuff like that. Salvation Army.
Now, would the community all get together to go and watch?
On Digby Street on a Saturday night, you couldn't get through. It would be so jammed with people. They'd all be in doing your shopping. You shop one day a week. That was Saturday night.
Wow.
You couldn't walk through the street to Digby. It would be so take you long to walk through. Be jammed from one end to the other. People.
That's when you'd see all your relatives.
Yeah, all your friends, relatives. Yeah.
Isn't that neat?
Oh yeah. See, things were more like family oriented, community oriented. Everything was on different principles completely than it is today.
How would the roads have been back then?
It all depends on what time of the. Oh, from the last part of February to April, forget it. We'd miss 2 weeks of school in the spring. Oh, you couldn't get a bus route. Oh no. They'd all break up. They'd all break up. Frost come out.
Too.
They're all dirt roads. Now, if you could get down to Rice's Corner, then you have pavement from there. But any of these back roads here, you'd have trouble walking them.
Who would maintain the roads?
Department of Highways, but going back then, I remember the grader going up and down by here. John Murley would drive the horses to pull the grader. And Reg Murley, do you know Bruce Murley? Digby. He's works manager in Digby. His father would turn the wheels to put the grader up and down. You're going back quite a few years.
Wow.
As a kid, that's the way it was. It was done by hand. Then there'd be a crew come along with forks and shovels and pick the big rocks off and throw them in the ditch.
So interesting.
I gotta head back. I got a deadline. Thanks.
Okay.
okay.
Yeah, no problem.
Nice meeting you, folks.
Take care.
Put
Thank
this on Monday.
Okay.
Get cable.
What do you remember about your teenage years?
You had a good time in school. 1948. Well, let's see how old I'd be then. I'd be 13. Yeah, I was born in 35. You had a school, a new school. You'd have good and wonderful friends in there. They'd have a dance once in a while at the school. They actually had a gymnasium. I didn't even know what the gymnasium was until they built that school. Beautiful gymnasium, and that opened in 1948. So you'd have a good time there. They used to really go out for basketball and things like that. And they'd have the buses going to Annapolis, Bridgetown, whatever. And you had a good teenage life.
What
No
would the
complaints in it.
dances be like?
Well, it's different dance than they do now, I'll tell you. It'd be a lot of fun. Really enjoyable. We'd have a good time. There would be a big crowd there. There was always a crowd.
What sorts of decorations would they have?
Oh, they put up their streamers and different things like that. They wouldn't have the elaborate decorations you have now, but sometimes you didn't have decorations. You didn't need it. You went there for a good time.
Good. Who were your screen idols back then?
Roy Rogers, Gene Autry. Along in that line, forget some of the names. That's going back a few years. That would be two of the closest ones that I would think of. And of course, if you had a movie in town, it would be The Lone Ranger or The Shadow or different things like that. Probably some of those names you've never heard. But I think probably Roy Rogers, Gene Autry along in there. Dale Evans. That'd be a lot of it in those days.
Now, would most of the films back then be a lot of Western?
Yeah, there
movies?
was. You had two theaters in Digby at that time. You had the Capitol and the Bijou.
Now, where would they be at?
Right on Front Street. One would be right there. Do you know where there's a flower shop? What's the name? Fide? No.
Gabriel's.
Gabriel's. Well, just this side of it is where the Capitol was, and up probably where Jim's Furnishes is where the Bijou would be.
Okay.
So you had two movies. You could have your pick there.
Okay. What kind of music did you like back then?
You didn't have that much music. You go to different homes. This is a musical part of the country. Everybody played. Well, I didn't, or my family, but like back here, the Freddies, they play the fiddle and the banjo and everything, and you get a lot of that.
Mm-hmm.
Different, the French ate to the dances and different things like that. We didn't have a radio on that much to listen to music. You'd have certain songs, yeah, but it would be more what you would call real oldies now. In those days, for long before Elvis.
Do you remember what stations would come in on your radio back then?
About the only one you could really get was St. John,
Okay.
CHSJ.
What did you expect to do when you grew up?
Oh, I always thought of like getting the Mounties or Armies, but it didn't work out. I was too young for the Second World War. I was only 4.5 when it started. And I went in to sign up in the Korean War. And it wouldn't take me unless Mom signed for me. And Mom wouldn't sign because my brother's been overseas. So I kept right on going for Ontario. I was just turned 17 then.
Wow.
Because you had to have your parents' signature. I was too young to win.
Now, how did you feel that your mother wouldn't sign that for you?
Oh, I wouldn't hold resentment or nothing like that. She had her reasons, no. I remember the war well. Dad couldn't really read and write. So every night, Mom read the newspaper. So we'd naturally hear it as kids. And we knew everything that was going on in that war. Who was killed, who was, everything. Because Mom would read it. A little bit scary, he was only a kid. But I knew what was going on in the war. So if Mom said no, she wasn't signing, well, that was final. You never questioned your parents anyhow. When they said no, that was no. There was never a second time. They never ever told you no twice. And they didn't abuse you. They didn't hit you. If you deserved it, you did. But when they said no, you know they meant no.
That meant no.
Yep.
What different things do you remember about dating?
Oh, you'd have the odd date along the way, here and there. I wasn't that old when I was married. Wife was 18 when we were married. Got married younger in those days. I was 21. I'd gone to Ontario a couple of years and come back, and that's just back a little long. I met Marie. And we went together long before we were married.
Yeah.
I met her in September, middle of September. We were married the first March.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Went together, what, 3-4 months? 4-5 months?
September, October, November, December, January, February, March.
6
7
months? Yeah.
months.
Yeah.
Why was it that you had gone to Ontario? Was it that you said?
I went there, I got tired of working here, 17 cents an hour. 1952, I was working in the mills, and a big fire went through back here. And the Mounties come into the mills, and this is law, and I think it's probably still today. They conscripted all of us to go fight fire. I was a 17-year-old kid back there fighting fire, never even didn't know what a fire was in the woods. And when I come out of that, I said, I've had enough of this, and I just went to Ontario for a couple of years.
Now, were you working up there in Ontario?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, I took over this company down here. It's the same company. Loblaws owned Superstore.
Oh, wow.
I worked for them 50 years ago.
Okay.
I stayed a couple of years and I come home. Mom and Dad was getting long in years and I stayed for a while. About another 10 years and then we went to Ontario for a while. That's where all my kids were born and brought up and live up there.
Okay.
But it was very, very hard. The working conditions were very, very hard. One thing I regretted, I didn't get a trade or anything like that, but I'm not going to complain about it. We survived. I always managed to find work. No complaints.
Good attitude.
Well, it's no good to take any other attitude because it only causes yourself problems.
You're right. You're right. How did you originally meet your wife?
We differ on that. Her sister come down here and helped us look after Mom this summer before she passed away, but I didn't really know Marie. But I met her in at the co-op in here, which used to be where the country fair was. I met her that night.
Okay.
At the fair in here in Conway. So I need to say the next night I was up there. Yeah.
Could you tell me her full name, please?
Yes, but I always get it backwards. Marie Gertrude Franklin, and I've always signed it that way, but it's backwards, isn't it?
Yeah, my name is Gertrude Marie Franklin, but I go by Marie.
Okay.
I don't even call her Marie.
Okay.
I've never called her Marie.
No.
I've always called her Ree.
Ree?
Yeah. I've always done that.
Okay. Once you were married, where did you live?
Right here, the old house that used to be here.
And how much did it cost for your first home?
We lived here for 7 years.
I had this home at that time.
Okay.
It was mine. Very hard to survive in those days. You didn't have Medicare. You had nothing. Everything you done on your own. We lived, you know what I mean? We had the groceries on the table and stuff like that, but it was very, very hard. So we lived here, 7 years. And the children started coming along at Ontario. I know I can find work, and I did. And I went to one mill in the steel mills, and I stayed there 25 years in one mill.
Now, what was it like working in the mill?
It was a lot different than what I was used to here. Those mills are big. When I left there was 13,000 in that mill, so it's a fair-sized mill. They stretch out for a long ways. You can soon get lost. It's big, heavy machinery. It's not like you'd imagine here. The building I worked in, probably about 3 times as long as from here to the road up there. That was the one building.
Wow.
You talked to one another on phones because you couldn't see one another. It was that long. It was what they call a pickle line. Sounds strange, a pickle line in a steel mill, but you were pickling steel, cleaning it, cutting it, cleaning it, oiling it. And there was a lot of good people there. I enjoyed it there. This might not go over too big on some of the right people see it, but I was in a non-union shop, and they used us good. They used us good. They still, I got a big letter from the big book from it today. They still class an employee there in one sense, even though I've been away for 10 years. I get the benefits that they get. So they've used us good. Very good.
Good.
Michelin patterned their operations after Dofasco.
So what was the name of that mill?
Dofasco.
Vasco Mill?
What it is, Dominion Foundry and Steel Company of Canada.
Okay.
Dofasco. I'll
Dofasco.
show you the quarter century picture I have up there.
Okay. How much taxes would you have had to pay back then?
We're here.
Yeah.
1954, I come back and I stay with Mom and Dad, and the tax bill come in, and I think it was $80, because my income tax from Ontario, Quebec, was $80. So one paid the other. I do remember that. I do remember that.
What role, if any, did the company store play in your life?
What do you mean?
There was a lot of people that had, that had worked in, let's say, for Tupper Warren or something.
Oh yeah, I worked
like
there. I worked in that store.
Now, would you have to, would your pay be groceries? Do you know what I mean? Or would you get
No,
pay?
I'd get my pay, but at 17 cents an hour, it wasn't too big a pay. It was a little different in your stores now. You learned to figure there, because you didn't have cash registers that done it for you. Everything was basically done by pencil, and then you just bring in the money. So you got to do it quick in your head. Because at that time, pretty near everything was charged there. All the men working there. At one time, they had as many as 300 people working there. That would be in the store, the mill. They have a lot of men out in lumber camps logging, cutting the logs, bringing them into the mills and stuff. So I've heard they've had as high as 300 working there at once. And most of them would charge all their, whatever they bought. So there'd be a lot of 5, 10, 15 cent deals, and you make a little bill and you put it there, and then that would come off their pay at the end of the week.
I see.
But you get to know a lot of people, and that was my first experience in the stores. I worked in the mill for a while too. That was a little different. It was kind of small when I left school and out to work. It was very, very small. But I'll tell you, when you get on those jobs, you soon grew. When I left school at 16, I went out to work. I was 5'2" and I weighed 98 pounds. You get in those mills, some of that stuff is pretty rugged work. Within a year, I was 160 pounds and I was 5'10½".
Wow.
All you could do is walk to work, and in between when you got a chance, eat. And that's all I done for a year.
Now, was that the common thing for people to do back then, leave and go to work like that?
Well, you had to go to work. You got to have work. You got to have groceries. So I worked in Tuppers here. It's only 4.5, something like that, miles away. So, but I lived at home.
Okay.
So I lived at home. But then you even live at home, you got to pay your board. Because mom and dad had no income.
Right.
Like I said, they didn't have the income. You had to be 70 before you got the old age pension then. Then it wasn't very much. It was only about $40.
I thought it was 75 back then.
No, 70. No, it was 70.
What things do you remember about the Depression?
Actual depression, I wasn't born in it. The depression started in the collapse was in 29 or whatever. But I would be born at the end of the depression, 35. But the depression would last a lot longer for us with a big family. Things were hard. There's no getting around it. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not complaining. We had a good life. You know, the first thing I go to bed every night, I say, Lord, thank you for a bed to sleep in. We slept on straw.
Wow.
That was very common then. We were not a rich family. With 10 children, there was no way you could pay. Even if Dad got a job, it would only be for $1 a day. 10 kids. No. Things were very, very hard in the Depression. You did live on your potatoes, your salt pork. We always had bread. And we always had a porridge. Whether it be cornmeal or bran or whatever, we'd use the stuff that we'd have in the barn for the cattle feed. We'd use the same as them. It was perfectly clean. We'd have all that. When anything turned green in the spring, we had it and we cooked it. No matter what, dandelion greens, beet greens, mango greens, turnip greens, marsh greens, everything that, and of course you picked the wild strawberries, raspberries, everything. We survived and stuff. Things started turning a little better during the war. There was more work. Some of the families out to work. There was still quite a few was in school, but some of the family was out to work. And I remember George overseas, and at that time, they didn't get much money for being in the Army. But where he was not married, $20 a month come home to mom. So that was a lot of money, $20.
Wow.
To live on, yeah. So things started picking up a little bit.
Okay. What sorts of things can you tell me about wartime?
It was a little bit scary. I remember just wave after wave after wave of planes going over here. I'm not sure where they'd be going. They could be going to Newfoundland, and then that'd be the first leg of their journey. You could see the troop trains going through here. There's a big army base in Yarmouth. Digby would be just swamped with sailors. That's when they built Cornwallis. It opened in 1942. See, I could watch it right from here. It's about 10 miles away, but I can see it from my place here. And at one time, they had 10,000 sailors there. That's a lot of them. Sometimes it'd be a little scary to go in town. You'd see things you didn't especially want to see, but as only a kid, it would be kind of scary, you know. Well, there'd be the odd little fight in town and things like that. Although it wasn't that bad, but it'd be a little scary for kids. I remember all that. I remember you couldn't, of course we didn't have the money to buy really anyhow, but you couldn't buy things like bananas or Mom wanted a stove, and we could not get a stove all through the war.
Now, why was that?
All metal went for war supplies. You couldn't
Wow.
get it. You just couldn't get those things. I remember the first bananas I seen was after the war, and I don't know where I got a quarter, but I bought a quarter's worth of bananas, and I don't like them ever since because I got sick. I ate so many. We'd never seen them before.
Wow.
You see, there was rations. We done all right with sugar because we knew people in town that run a restaurant, and they wanted butter. Well, we had our own butter. We churned our own butter. We made our own butter,
Okay.
and we trade stamps so we could have a little bit of sugar. So that Mom could make a cake and a few things like that then, or whatever she was using it for. Made a big difference on that because we just give her our butter coupons because she ran the gym restaurant in town.
Okay.
There's a lot of good memories of the war. There's, wherever you look, you'd think nothing. Seeing soldiers march up the street here or everywhere. So it was war. Everything was war. The big boats that come in into Digby. I went through one of the German submarines they captured out here, and scared me half to death with them things. They had in here at the wharf. They captured it just outside the gut here.
Now, when was this?
During the war.
Wow.
They were so, you get in there and it's creepy. You got to bend over here and bend there. Well, I was only a kid, but I didn't really enjoy it. I'm sorry I went on it, but I did get to go through it.
Wow.
Yeah, there was ships sunk right out here. A lot of them.
Now, how would the war have had an effect on the community, like as a whole?
There was people killed here. People come back wounded. It'd be more a little scary for us kids, but with the adults, it would be their families that was lost. Remember Gerald Porter coming back from overseas, shrapnel all through him, lived up the road here. Just a beautiful young man. I mean, he was a lot older than I was. He was in the war, and I was only 4 or 5. I remember I'd be walking home from town or anything, kid, and he'd pick me up. We'd stand on the running board and drive home. And some of the people didn't come back. There was people killed here. And, of course, my brother was over there. And Mum didn't like that. Well, it's her boy. It's her oldest boy was over there, George. So, yeah, it could be very hard on the family. And you'd hear this one was killed and that one was killed. You knew all these people. They were people that the older ones in our family knew. Some would be boyfriends, some would be girlfriends. They were killed. And there was a lot of them from here that were. Many.
Wow.
That's why I work with the Legion now. I work with the Legion. I'm a chaplain in it and do different things. I figure if I can work there a few years, maybe I can pay back a little of the debt that I owe. That's why I'm in there. It's not for little medals or any of that stuff. That's not it. If I can work a little bit and help them out, why? I owe them it. More than owe them it. Because we have a wonderful country. We have the best country in the world.
You're right.
And we have a free country. And I love my freedom and everything. I love my freedom. And then men and women pay for it. Yeah. So that's why I work at the Legion.
Well, that's nice. Now, what memories do you have of the Second World War?
Well, this is the Second World War that I'm talking about.
Okay.
Because I was born in 35 and the war
Right,
started
right.
September 39.
Okay.
I remember the day it started. I remember all that stuff. I remember the day it was over. The VE Day. That was in May. We planted potatoes out there. I'd still only be 10 years old. And my brother and my uncle were talking to one another, and they lived over in Shelburne Road where I showed you. Of course, it was more open then.
Okay.
They were horning to one another back and forth. It would be over a mile across. And you could hear it just as plain as anything. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, we were planting potatoes out there.
Now, how would you have heard that the war ended? Through newspapers, radio?
Oh, it would spread like wildfire, probably a phone call, although we didn't have a phone. Somebody else would have a phone and run take you a message.
Okay.
Because I remember the day my brother come home from overseas. Mum didn't believe us. We was over to the neighbors, and they got a phone call that George was coming home.
Oh, nice.
And, of course, Mum broke down. George coming home. Because she never knew whether they were going to live or die or what.
Right.
And the neighbors over here had a phone. So as kids, we were probably over there because they had a little more than we did, and we used to go for treats and stuff if we could get it. And they told us that there was a call that George was coming home.
Nice.
Yeah, I remember that. I was scared to death. I didn't really know him. was only 5 years old when he signed out.
Wow.
By the time he got home, he was 27 years old. You know, he was 23 when he went in. He was 17, 18, 19 years older than me. You know.
Wow.
So I really didn't know him, a guy coming home from overseas.
Okay. How would you plan for hard times or retirement?
I'm retired, and the company give us several days training on retirement. But I see retirement as a time to get busy. There's not enough hours in the day now. There's so much to do out there. You never could do it before. You had family to raise, get through school, work, extra jobs, all that kind of stuff, get them through. Now, just don't seem to be enough hours in a day. The only thing is, what I really appreciate now, if I want a nap through the day, 5 or 10 minutes, I can go do it, where you couldn't at work. But so I didn't have to plan for retirement, but I do enjoy it.
Okay. How did your parents pass on their possessions to the next generation?
I have a place here. Those days there wasn't that many possessions. Each one got different little trinkets, but we were not a rich family.
Okay.
To be a few nice pieces of china, family Bible, a few nice quilts, maybe crocheted stuff like that. They all have this year, a few pictures.
Now, would it be that the older person would get the things, or just anyone?
Well, I was here looking after the place and looking after old Dan.
Okay. How do people help each other out in days gone by that would be different from now?
If you had a problem, your neighbors were there to help you. Like this time of year, if a man was sick, he couldn't get his firewood in for the winter. All the neighbors get together, go cut it, haul it out, saw, split it, and put it right there. If the barn burnt, you'd have a barn raising to get it built again. All that stuff was done. If there were sick people in the home, you'd have different neighbors come in helping out here and there and everywhere. It was altogether different than it is now.
Yeah.
Everybody worked together.
What different things do you remember about the poor farm?
I'm not saying that. I don't remember good things there.
What do you remember about elections?
Oh, man. They used to get excited. I think they'd kill one. Oh, yeah. You would have open votes in. Because Mom always insisted that you had an open vote. I remember that part. But boy, they would get excited them days. Oh, there'd be a lot of fights there. Oh, yes. They took it pretty serious.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting. What ghost stories would you remember from your younger years?
Ghost Path.
What was that now?
Down the valley here. You know where the church was down here.
Yeah.
You go down there, down the valley, go across the bridge. There was a little path just past the bridge that went under there. Myrtle Finnegan's got a house down there now. And there was a path through there. We always scared of that. That was a ghost path. Mom, I don't know who would tell us. No, Mom wouldn't tell us that kind of stuff. They found a head in the well, or the body in the well, or something like that. But anyhow, we was always scared to go by there, the ghost path. I don't know why.
That's not something.
It's silly. It's a joke now, but boy, it wasn't then.
What about superstitions?
I don't believe in that whatsoever. None whatsoever. Oh, there was lots of them out. Friday the 13th, Black Hat. Don't believe none of that.
What is the most worst weather that you can remember?
Well, we've had some violent storms here. What year was it you were in the hospital? Blew the roof off the hospital and you were in there?
Well, that was Hurricane Edna. That was
54?
back in
54.
55?
54 or 55, I forget which year.
55.
She was in the hospital in Roseway, Shelburne, took the roof off the hospital. That was a violent storm, a very violent storm.
What was the name of that storm, did you say?
I think it was Hurricane Edna.
Wow.
Yeah, she was in Roseway Hospital down
Shelburne.
Shelburne. Took the roof right off.
Of course, I didn't know him then.
Yeah. She was
Wow.
15 or
Yeah.
whatever. The storms I mind would be the winter blizzards. We used to have a lot of snow here. We used to have a lot of snow. We don't get it that way like we used to.
Yeah,
I mean, you've heard people say we don't get snow like we used to. That's a fact. We do not get the
the
snow
year
we used
we
to.
were married, in March, and in April it had such a bad snowstorm out
Yeah.
here, it was like way above the cars,
Yeah.
the drifts.
Wow.
The farmers were through to the South Shore and never got home for 2 days.
Isn't that something?
Yeah, you don't have the violent snowstorms and blizzards. They're a little scary. If you got a problem, you can't get out. That's the only storms that bother me.
Now, what would people in the community do, let's say, if a doctor needed to get out or something?
Well, I tell you, when I had to go to the hospital, I've heard him talk about it. Down below, Gowdy Nichols got his horse and buggy and the big robes and took him up to the hospital. But I suspect there's still a law out there. If the snow gets too deep, the horse can't get through, you go out and shovel. That is law. You have to shovel. You must shovel to get the people through. Sickness and that stuff. Yeah.
What different things can you tell me about shipwrecks around here?
The worst one I remember is the Novadoc. Gypsum boat out there. I just said a few words ago about Gerald Nichols come back. It was sharpening along through him. He went down on it.
Okay.
The guy that just come and got the quinces, his brother went down on it. Two of the Francis boys over here went down on it. There was two Vroom brothers went down on it. My sister, one of them was her boyfriend at that time. They're all people you know. All went down on it. It was a violent storm. And of course gypsum is heavy.
Mm-hmm.
And they were warned not to go out, but the captain says take her out anyhow. And they have found that boat a year or two ago off in Boston somewhere.
Isn't that something?
Yeah. But that's very, very common here. Every year there's boat after boat after boat that goes down. You know that, you hear the news.
Wow.
Yeah.
How did your community police itself back then?
We had the Mounties. Remember the first one I ever seen? I was scared to death. Down the field plowing, and the Mountie come down. He was looking for my brother to sign up in the army. Somebody had made a mistake, and Mum was not very impressed. My brother was already in Italy. They made a mistake. They left sooner than they come. Somehow somebody made a mistake. He was already overseas.
Oh, wow.
Those days, I mean, they didn't do it very often, or I don't know if they ever did, but it was shoot on sight if they wanted to.
Could you paint me a picture of this community when you were growing up, how bustling it was?
It wasn't, it was a beautiful community. This was all farms up here. As a kid, I remember all farms, beautiful farms. It would be the Gowdy Nichols farms. They'd all go in with their horse and buggies as a kid, and some of them at that time were starting to get cars and little pickup trucks and stuff, whatever. But they'd be going in every day with their produce. Every day of the week. It was all, we were one of the poor families, but all the farms up here, even the farms next door, there wasn't bushes there. It was all farms. Big white fences. It was a busy time. And if you know where Jordantown is, there's crossroads down there in Jordantown. One goes out down to Marshalltown, the other one comes out right by Garage over here, another one comes out right down here in Acaciaville. But if the fourth road comes through, it would come right up by my house here.
Okay.
So down below Jordantown was it was all a colored settlement. There was a lot of people there at that time. But there'd be 5, 10, 15, 20 men come up through there every morning, walk up through and work on the farms.
Oh, wow.
And you got to know them all. And it's a beautiful little community down there.
Nice.
But they would all come up through here, so things be exciting. We'd all go out and talk, and you got to know everybody.
Nice.
But it would be busy, everybody going to town each day with their produce. But it was a farming community, a big farming community.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you remember about Maud Lewis?
I can just remember, I remember where her place was, and I'd see her outside painting. For 1 year I drove a school bus. That was back in '62. I drove that route from Digby to the Barton Road where it comes out in Barton. And you'd see her out there painting and stuff. I didn't really know her, but I would see her every day. And she would sit out in the sun and do her painting out there. That part I remember of her. I didn't realize her hands were so crippled and stuff. You couldn't tell by driving the bus and stuff. And you'd see her husband out there too. Yeah. But I remember that. I see him every day.
Oh. What different organizations did you belong to?
Myself?
Mm-hmm.
None. I never belonged to any organization. The first organization I ever joined was the Legion.
Could you tell me some things about the Legion?
I'm enjoying it there. Like I said, I went there for one reason.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a chaplain there. I find certain things very hard now. I've got to make a lot of friends. In a year or 2 or 3 down the line, I have the funeral services for them.
Yeah.
That's very, very hard. But I enjoy working there. It's coming along now. It's a nice, friendly bunch in there. Sometimes people give the Legion a little rough name. It's not that way. They don't have that roughness in there. It's not allowed there. It's a place, even though I don't drink or smoke or whatever. I did it one time. I can go in there and sit down, relax, and have good fellowship with all those people in there.
Nice.
There's some beautiful, beautiful people in there. And I love them all. I enjoy it. I really do. It's a part of my life now. I enjoy it.
How important do you think the Legion is to your community?
It's very, very important. The Legion everything is a volunteer. It's all over. If we get a few dollars here, a few dollars there, it's all put out in the communities in different places. We just give Tideview a brand new wheelchair.
Oh, nice.
There was a little bit of money left in one spot, so we use it for that. It's good. The Legion, the veterans are all getting old now. A week or so ago, we drove up to Kentville to visit one there, Oldie Sproul. He was happy to see somebody from home to come visit him and talk to him and stuff. He'll be 82, his next birthday. I think it's a good organization. It's the same as anything else. You'll have the odd one that has a little problem, but basically the Legion is a good organization. And it does do a lot for the veterans. It can keep us busy. That was Legion Call now, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. When would people get together in your community for a good time back then?
Oh, roll call would be one of the biggest at the church. Oh, that was we look forward to that. Oh, you wanted to eat. Like I said, we were from big families. Sometimes you didn't have quite enough. There used to be an old hall down here. We called it the Indian Hall. I think Indians lived in it years and years ago, before my time or whatever. We called it the Indian Hall. And we'd go for roll call. That'd be fantastic. Another good time would be your exhibitions in the fall. That'd be fantastic, going to the exhibitions. You really look forward to that. All the different things, the good food, everything that was there. That'd be 2 of the main ones I would think of right there. And then, of course, the church would have suppers and different things like that. And of course, there used to be all the time, there used to be pie auctions. Remember that?
Mm.
The women make the pie, and then the guys go to a home or to a community center or whatever and bid on the pies. Now, if somebody was bidding on my girlfriend's pie, guess what that pie would go for? Oh, you start a real rivalry there. You're not getting my girlfriend's pie.
That must have been fun. That
It
must
was. It was. They do that quite often. If somebody had a little problem, they raise the money for somebody if they'd lost a barn or a house or anything. Have a little pie sale. It was a lot of fun. You never heard of that one before?
No.
Oh, that was common. Yeah,
What a
that's
good idea. How would you compare family values today with those of days gone by?
Family values has really gone downhill. It's really gone downhill. We have a very close family ourselves. We try to keep a very close family. Even though I'm not in Ontario, Easter my kids are together, all of them. Christmas, all occasions are together, and they're very, very close. One's got a little problem, the other one's in helping them. One's got to go to Toronto Saturday to help the other daughter to fix the steps in the back of her house and stuff. She's not a carpenter, so he's going in. My family's close that way. So I sort of specify that. I mean, you can't force anything, but you specify that, and it really works. But as far as family values, community-wise and county-wise, they've really gone downhill. It's not like it used to be. That's sad. That's so sad. Because to me, them were the good old days. The rest of us now is the good old days. But in those, the family, that was the good old days. I miss that part. I miss it. You don't know your neighbors if you happen to meet them, but then you don't. It's just not like it used to be. Everybody knew everybody. They're friends. talk, laugh, help one another, everything. It was enjoyable.
What was your religion?
Baptist.
And what would Sundays be like at your home?
Leftover beans at dinner time. Oh no, you went to Sunday school and church every day as a kid. Mom was a Christian lady. I really remember that. And her family the same way. Baptist, so we were brought up in that, but same as anybody else. She didn't, but I did, got away from it. And 56 years later, I'm back to it.
Okay.
So we have a good church life, yes. In fact, I have had a pastor's license to fill in.
Oh, wow.
Different churches, yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I
Nice.
filled in different places. Probably been about 15 different churches here to have different services. Or they. And of course I go into Tyview and have services there.
Well, that's nice.
I enjoy it.
Good.
But, no, there was churches in those days. Sometimes on a Sunday you'd have trouble finding a seat. They'd be full.
Wow.
Don't know where they all come from. Well, you take a family like ours, even if only half of them was home, be mom and dad and say 5 of the kids, there's 7 right there. Even if only half the kids were home and all the family was big like that. But her family went to church, there was about 12 or 13 going to church all at once.
That's when everybody went.
If mom could catch us all.
Now, where is the church still standing
Oh
today?
yes, it's right here.
That's the one that.
We show you a picture.
passed it.
The picture's right around the corner here, we show you.
Okay.
Where you go. Yeah, it's the Hillgrove Baptist Church, even though this is Acaciaville.
Okay. That's one thing I had to ask you that I wrote down. Tell me about the difference you had told me about Acaciaville and Hillgrove.
Going back a long, long while ago, a lot of these places was all really going back 300-400 years ago was joggins. This land here, I had my land surveyed about 5 or 6 years ago here on the northwest side. And in order to survey that, he went right back, he had to go way back in the early 1700s, where the land all come from. Everett Hall was a surveyor in Digby. And he brought me some papers that he had to dig up, and I'll also show you a couple of maps there. This at one time back in the early 1700s, from Jordantown up over here, which is Acaciaville, down the other side, and quite a ways up towards Hillgrove, was a grant from the Queen to the black men,
Okay.
the black people. I'm not it was just black so-and-so, got this piece and that piece. And that was all black at that time. Over the years, the white people had bought it out. So there was such a mix-up that it had to be all straightened out to get, because in those days, well, I'll sell you an acre of land, you just go measure off with a measuring stick and sell them an acre of land, but most of it was never ever recorded. But at that time, and even in my time, there was quite a bit of segregation here.
Mm-hmm.
I was brought up under that. Now myself, I'm very, very fortunate. Like I said, the old Woods Road went through here, and all the colored folk would come up and work on the farms and stuff. So I had an extra community where I could have all the friends. I could run down through the woods here. It's only about
Neat.
4 or 5 minutes down through the woods, and I could run down. Oh, I had fantastic friends in Jordantown. The Sims boys used to come out, Vincent, Vernon, Harold, Carl Bailey, Barbara Jean, all of them. We had a good time. So segregation did not bother me at all. But even when I went out to work at Tupper Warren's, it was segregated there. The bunkhouses were separate, the cookhouses were separate, all that stuff was brought up that way. And as far as when this church down here was originally built, what, 161 years old now? 161 or 62. It was a white church, and the colored used to sit upstairs. And then about 15, 20 years later, the colored. Some people say I'm saying the wrong word, but we said it for respect, colored. I think now you're supposed to say black or something. I don't know. But with us in the old school, with the old school,
Yeah.
that's the way we did it. But they were segregated,
Yeah.
very much so. They had their own school in Conway. It was up, it had to be in the 50s before they started going to, Jordantown started going to the Digby School. There was quite a bit of that at that time. I don't really know why people down the road call themselves such and such Hillgrove, but they're not. They're not Hillgrove.
Hillgrove starts up the road.
Oh,
here.
another half mile or more. There's a great big sign, Acaciaville, Hillgrove. Whether they want to distance themselves from people or not, I wouldn't like to say.
But the churches, there's Acaciaville Church.
There's Acaciaville Church, which is
It's
the colored church. You'll see two churches when you come up by. The one right here on the corner is a big
Yeah.
one. Well, you go down about a half mile below that, you'll see another one, Acaciaville Church.
It must have been hard for those little black children as
It was.
kids.
It was very hard. It was very hard.
It's hard to believe that it was like that back then, isn't it?
Well, it was. They worked in the same mills we did and all that stuff, but there was, like I said, it didn't affect me because my friends are black and white both. I've always had good friends black and white.
Do you think it had an effect on the community if black people would, you know, come over here or let's say be at the other church?
Well, they were, I don't think that part would affect them. But you must remember going back
It was a way of
150,
life then.
there was a colored lady used to come up through the woods, a good friend of Mom's, Mrs. McLeod. We didn't call them black or anything, Mrs. McLeod. She was a great old lady, fantastic. She was a great friend of Mom's. And I remember her coming up here. She'd come up and visit Mom and stuff. Mom couldn't walk down, she had heart problems and stuff, but she would come up and visit Mom. And it was never an issue made of it. Whether they were brought up, she just said she remembers something about slavery. Now, I couldn't quite figure out what she meant by that. Of course, I was only a kid. But they'd have the same food at the table, but she would always sit at a different table than us at the mealtime. Now, that's not because Mom would set her there. That's not so. But I've gone to homes down here, down the road, where the color would be sitting one day, one white at the other. Bring your own private home. But it was that way. I don't think it was a big issue here, but it was done. Whether it affected some of the families or whether it didn't, I don't know.
So there would have been no black children in your school classes?
No, not here, no.
Would
Oh,
they have been
absolutely not.
allowed, or?
No, they weren't allowed. No, they had to go through Jordantown and walk out just Conway. There's a Conway Center over there. That's what was known as the colored school.
Okay.
I think there was probably a few in Digby, but not that many. Now, when you go up to Smith's Cove and up that way, I suspect they were probably all went together because there was no colored school up there. Of course, there wasn't that many people up there, black people up there. But around here, right down here, was a whole community. There was a lot. They've branched out, they're everywhere now. But I think they almost had to stay in one community at that time. I think you go back and check some of your Digby laws and you find some shockers in there.
I will. I'm gonna. I'd like
Yeah.
to. They probably have that at
Yeah.
the municipality. Well, thank you very much. Got through my questions. I had over 100 questions I asked you.
Well, I probably talked you to death in an hour and a half.
No, that's wonderful. Thank you.
And if there's anything I said wrong in there, rub it out.
I won't put it in there.
The tape is off, is it?
Yeah.
Well, I tell you, the wife and I didn't go very far in school, so sometimes our words aren't